Hi, Mel. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited you're here with us at the Kindling Project podcast.
Hi, Mick. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me join you and your community today.
So fun, girl. Listen, we can't start this podcast without really acknowledging your event that you had. Was that your very first workshop on Sunday?
It was my first workshop, pop-up event. Yeah. Thank you
So
so much for attending.
It was so fun. It was reclaiming your story, moving towards self-discovery through mind, body, and soul exercises. And you co-hosted with Kate Bryan Milligan, who's adorable, by the way,
Yeah,
from One
she's
Girl
great.
Revolution. So fun. You guys make really great partners. And
Thank you.
she said something while we were doing one of the exercises that, we don't believe in coincidences. And I
hmm
just thought, isn't that something? Because Mel, the way you and I met was just like that. We have a mutual connection, and she
hmm
just mentioned, hey, she was on our podcast, Stephanie. She mentioned you. I met this girl, Mel. She's so cool. She's got such a cool vibe. She's doing some really good work. You've got to meet her. And we were like, of course, we're always open to meeting new people. And then just like that, 2 days later, it wasn't planned. We were at
Right.
an event together, and you and we sat right across from each other.
It was so meant to be. It was wild.
Isn't
The
that
fact,
something?
yeah, it was so great.
I just love when the universe lines itself up. And a
Same.
couple more points about your event, which was so well done. I'm
Thank
obsessed
you.
with the oats, by the way.
Aren't they
Obsessed.
so good? Yeah.
Is it the
We
coconut milk?
The coconut milk. Yep. It's that raw coconut milk. It's like makes it extra thick and creamy. Oh, it's so good.
It's so good. And I've been doing them all week. And then I chatted with your neighbor friend, Michelle, and she
hmm
gave me this recipe for a peanut butter and jelly one, which is on my queue too. So I'm really,
Oh,
really excited
nice.
about that.
Okay.
And the third thought I had about your awesome event was that the title of it, Reclaiming Your
hmm
Story, Moving Towards Self-Discovery Through Mind, Body, and Soul Exercises.
hmm
I feel like that's very much your story at the moment and what it
Yes,
has been for the last few years.
for sure. It's so true. I was a commercial photographer for so long, and then um, through my discovery of I was diagnosed with lupus in 2006 and struggled for years with it. And so when I started taking a holistic approach to that of healing my body, I realized that all of it really was a full lifestyle effect, right? It was the way I moved my body, it was the way I think about movement, the way I think about how I eat or what I'm eating, and then also the ingredients that I'm fueling my body with. It kind of was a little bit of everything. And I think so often we're like, especially with, society and diet culture, we're so honed into thinking it's just one thing of like,
Mhm.
do this and not knocking any diet that's out there if that's your jam. But getting into these like only keto, only staying on certain plans is not necessarily the most effective if you want to take a bio-individual approach to your health. And like, because I do think it has to do with like your whole body and every aspect of how you're living your life. That's what's really going to set you aside from a temporary fix to sustainable health and curing that health that you're looking for, your optimal goals for yourself, right?
Yeah, so okay, let's just back up a little bit because there's a
Yeah,
lot
it's so
to
much.
unpack there. I just picked up photography, lupus, and now this well-being. But let's back it up a little bit so the listeners get to know who you are. Where did we find you 20 years ago? Or
Yeah,
young
so
Melissa? Where's young Melissa hanging out at age 20?
so young Melissa, Livingston, Montana is where I was born and raised, and then was really active, outgoing, always wanted to be a photographer. I was a very visual person. And so leading into the 20s, where you kind of want to begin, is I had just graduated college for photography, really looking to make that move to LA or New York because I knew that's where the photography business is that I wanted to dive into. I wanted
So
to
where
be
did
in,
you go to school?
I went to school in Spokane, Washington,
Okay. And then, but
and
your
then
hometown.
moved back to Montana while I was trying to figure out like what's this next move for myself.
So are you like Yellowstone living in Montana? Because obsessed with that show. And do you know Rip? Because you need to introduce me.
Unfortunately, I do not know Cole Hauser, but so if you're familiar with the show Yellowstone or A River Runs Through It, that's exactly where I grew up. I grew up in
Wow.
Paradise Valley, which is where the show is
That is so
based. They
cool.
don't film there, but it's
Yeah.
it's based there. Yeah.
And so what was that like living? I mean, I've never been to Montana. It looks
Yeah.
amazing. What was it like growing up with that beautiful environment, that beautiful landscape all around you?
It's you you only know what you know. And so
Mhm.
as a kid, that was my it's just the everyday of like the mountains were our playground, like, lived on a dirt road. I raised sheep. It was as small town as you can imagine. That's my upbringing and my life. My father was a logger, so we always spent the summers in the woods, camping for the summer. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't until I went away to college and I was driving home where I was like, oh my gosh, this is where I lived. And it's just, you take it for granted, right? Like
Yeah.
every school, like, trip would be Yellowstone National Park. And I remember as a kid being like, another field trip to Yellowstone. I'm so tired of Yellowstone. And now I'm like, how fortunate was I? Like, insane. It was amazing.
That is
I
so cool.
love it.
I mean, so
Mhm.
beautiful. And now, how many did you come from a large family?
There's four siblings. There's four of us. Yeah.
Okay. And you are
Yeah.
where in the birth
I'm
order?
second.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So,
there's older sister, then myself, my brother, and then a younger sister.
okay. So pretty
Mhm.
traditional upbringing in the sense, mom and dad, and just working
Yeah.
the working the land.
Yeah, somewhat. And then, as also I like raced motocross, but I also was a cheerleader. So it was
No
this
shit.
like
Oh my God, that's so
all
cool.
sorts of stuff. Yeah. So I just was always interested in trying new things and adventurous. And I guess that stays with me, which kind of led me down the path of like trying to address my health because I wasn't able to move the way that I wanted. So kind of trying to, I'll get back on track here to your
Yeah.
question originally, but so yeah, 20 years ago, I met, I was working at a bar in Bozeman, Montana, actually, and applying for jobs in LA and New York and just trying to get some entry level position. And um, just so happens that I happened to meet somebody one day at work. This guy was dining at the restaurant. I'm walking by. He trips me. I fall on the ground. He picks me up, and it's like just immediate banter back and forth. And it was like this like instant connection, instant love. And my parents were there at the time. It was weird. They were at my last table,
Uh,
and my mom's like, I swear that looks like Dave Coulier from Full House. I'm like, I don't think so. I'm like,
uh,
what would he be doing in
yeah.
Montana? I don't know. And I didn't even really put the two together until we started continuing conversation. And then he's like, let's meet up tonight. And then we hung out for 2 weeks straight, like never even exchanged phone numbers. And then he just left town. And I was like, he got my phone number from a mutual friend, I guess, and called me and was like, hey, that it was amazing. Like, I want to continue this. I don't know what this brings. We don't live in the same spot. And then I ended up getting work in LA, moved in with him right away, and then had this like instant, like fairy tale moment of just my life was so crazy at the time. It just like was a movie script. It was wild.
That is
And
crazy. So like literally love at first sight for
Yeah.
you. So it reminds me of a poem that I when I met my husband too, I just knew there was something, an instant connection. Not so much I'm going to move in with you and move out of state. That's pretty hard,
It's
pretty
intense.
radical.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But it reads, when I first met him, I knew in a moment I would have to spend the next few days rearranging my mind so there'd be room for him to stay, which is, I think, it's by
Oh my
Story
gosh.
People. And it's so
Yeah.
sweet because you meet these people and you're like, I wasn't planning for you, but I've got to work things around because you're staying in my life
Yeah.
somehow. And he felt that way about you too. So you just leaped
Yeah.
and went for it.
Yeah. And
That's,
then, yeah, so shortly after I moved to LA, like about 6 months later,
yeah.
I was driving to work in rush hour traffic in LA. And thankfully, rush hour, you know how slow it is in
Yeah.
LA. But I had blacked out, crossed the median, was heading into it like to another car. And when I came to, it was like this weird feeling and pulled to the side of the road. And I had been experiencing a lot of different symptoms with my health. And as far as just being in pain, a lot of hair loss, rashes on my face, and mouth ulcers. And I kind of chalked it up to this idea that maybe it was the move and like so many new things were happening. My body was
Sure.
reacting to new environment. You know, so used to being at elevation in Montana, and now
Mhm.
I'm at a totally separate elevation. So I immediately went to the hospital, and it was multiple hospital visits later and seeing different specialists that they came to realize that I had a blood clot in my brain that caused me to lose vision.
Wow.
And they discovered that all of the symptoms paired with the blood work and this blood clot that I had lupus. And I hadn't really heard of lupus at the time.
Hmm.
And for those of you who don't know, it's an autoimmune disease where your body that's perfectly healthy starts attacking itself, thinking that it's fighting off infection. So this can affect your joints, your organs, and fighting even your brain. So then it just became this thing of like, how do I cure it? How do I stop it? And that's when I just fell down that rabbit hole of like medicating and using different medications to mask this pain and try and help these symptoms. And although it barely helped,
So tell me something, set it up for me though. Okay. So you
yeah,
moved to LA. How old are you?
I was 22,
22. Okay. Young. And then, so how long are you there until you get diagnosed with lupus?
6 months.
Six? Oh, like fast.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So
then,
poor
so
Dave's like, what happened?
oh, right. The love of my life.
Yeah,
Okay. For better or worse, this is my girl. I love it. What it was, he passed the test, evidently. Good job.
obviously. Yeah.
So, okay. So you get diagnosed and then you say, of course, how we're all respond is we trust the doctors. We
Mhm.
go in and they write you scripts and you just
Yeah.
start medicating.
Yeah.
But and how long did you do that? And how did you change your lifestyle? And tell me about some of the episodes and what it felt like because I don't know what lupus feels like.
Yeah. So, um, for me, and here's the like lupus can look different for everybody, but for me,
Uh-huh.
it was I'd have these like intense bouts of fatigue, of mouth ulcers, joint pain to the point where like my joints hurt so bad in the morning. They were so stiff that like I couldn't even move them. Dave would have to like massage my knees and my like elbows. I'd get these intense migraines that probably were like blackout migraines 2 to 3 times a week where I was just
Wow.
around a toilet bowl. um, and then my joints started to fill with fluid. So I would get the fluid removed from them every once in a while. And then I would have to, on these like bad, like stress was always a huge factor of like stress and food. If I like had that combination where my body was
Hmm.
rejecting whatever that food intake looked like, or if it was extra stressful that month, then I would end up in these crazy flare-ups where I'd go to the hospital, have steroid injections. Um, and
That's
so,
crazy. So you're dealing with all this. You're
mhm,
trying to take care of yourself and following doctor's orders, taking medication, but you're having these flare-ups. You're working, you're trying to build a career. You're
mhm,
young. I mean, you're still like
mhm,
trying to build your name and do your thing.
yeah.
That is crazy. How did you manage that? And did you, at that point, when you, in the early on, did you just medicate it?
I medicated and I just masked it. Like I honestly didn't know that that I would ever have pain-free life. So I just was like, this is my life and I'm just gonna go forward. And that LA mentality of like, if you don't outwork someone, they're gonna outwork you. So I just burned my body into the ground. Like I was really reckless with it. And um the thing about having an autoimmune disease is that it's not exterior necessarily. So like nobody knows what's really going on except for those who are like in my immediate circle, my like family or
Uh-huh.
Dave and my stepson at home. So um and then yeah, just anytime I'd have a migraine, it's like popping migraine medication and then just waiting till it kicks in and then continuing on or um taking pain medication. And that was dangerous too. I mean, I was on like some of the medication wasn't even helping. So I would take like Oxy every once in a while. And then that led to mental stuff with depression and
Uh-huh.
just, it was a rabbit hole of toxicity.
Wow. And Mel, how long did you simmer in that?
I would say like 9 years.
Oh,
It
wow.
was
So
kind of a
for
while. Um,
yeah, so you
yeah,
really learned to navigate and do this and still be really productive because you really did build a beautiful career in
thank you.
photography and you were doing very well for yourself. And yet at home, you were going and just curling up in pain.
Yeah, and I would say also just like you said, just masking it, right? So
Hmm.
on those down days, it's like you're in pain, so it's like, oh well, what's gonna make me feel better? I'm like, have some drinks, have wine, forget about the pain, and then that next morning,
Yeah.
just kind of like medicate through it, and then start your day all over again. So it's kind of a crazy cycle. Um, and looking back on it now of how I live, I'm like, that person, I don't even recognize that person. But I know so many people are in it and are going through it. I know I can't be alone in that.
Right.
So
And there's also no shame in that because you really do empathize with people who are dealing with chronic pain and just
yeah.
trying to get through and still be have a normal life. I mean, you're
Mm-hmm.
helping raise a child, and you're a wife, you're a
Mm-hmm.
sister, you're a mom, you're all these things. That's crazy. So tell me something. At what point, though? I mean, you were definitely not that person. That's not the person I met. I can't imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So I give you a lot of grace, and you're very brave. At what point? At some point, you just get sick of being sick, right? At some point, you're
Yeah.
just
I
like,
mean,
I can't do this anymore.
I I was so tired of being like tired. I
Hmm.
think anyone can relate to that in a lot of different facets of your life. But
Yeah.
um the pain, it's just like exhausting after a while. You're like, I'm just tired of this. And
Hmm.
um I think also changing your lifestyle is so scary when you have a whole network of people around you that you're like, if I change, will I lose these people and my lifestyle is going to differ? Can I enjoy the same things or go to the same events and still have a good time, right? Because you start identifying with just that person. Like I I was identifying as the pain almost of like, okay, this is just the way it is. This is how I am. I just mask everything to everyone else. And then like, I just go home. I have this little secret and it's like, whatever. So then getting through that seems like a little scary too. But, um, yeah, sorry, I got off on a tangent.
No, that's
So,
okay. No, it's
um,
hard because letting go of the version we're so comfortable with, regardless of how
mhm,
painful it is, it takes a lot of trust. And you're right, when you land, you're not quite sure who's going to be there, but the person you become,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, look at this beautiful human being who is just so incredible and has a beautiful message that you're doing so good with it. So, are your
Thanks.
parents concerned at this point? Are they like, or are you just they don't even realize what you're doing through this
Yeah,
process?
I think that I honestly didn't even know what I was doing, really.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know that it was bad. I just because you think about like even marketing, right? Like every single time you turn on the
Mm.
TV, it's like marketing a different drug for something to help you cure something. So for me, I'm like taking a non-holistic approach it didn't even enter my mind necessarily until I was on a hike with a girlfriend of mine who used to be a producer, work in production on Fuller House, and Dave had introduced us. And so we became fast friends. We were on a hike one day, and I was just telling her a little bit about, I was like opening up about my experience. And she was like, look, I've been really wanting to get into nutrition actually, and taking a holistic approach. She was like, would you be open to like being my first client and we'll kind of work together and see if, like what's there to lose, right?
Hmm.
And we started working together. And I will say it was not like an Amazon Prime order overnight
Yeah.
success. Like, it was 3 years of working together
Okay, so
before
wait,
I
back up. Sorry,
started.
22, you get diagnosed.
Yeah.
You're living till you're about 31 or so, just trying to do the timeline here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you have this conversation with your now
Mm-hmm.
business partner, which we'll learn all about her. You're what,
Yeah.
like in your early 30s?
Yep.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And
Your
so
timeline's great so far.
okay, so you're on a hike and you're like, you know what? I have nothing to lose. I'm sick of being sick. I'm
Mm-hmm.
tired. I don't want to feel
Mm-hmm.
this way anymore. And she
Yeah.
gives you a little glimpse of, well, there's maybe a different way to do this.
Exactly.
Okay.
So then we start working together, and it wasn't until like 3 years into it where I really started to see this like massive transformation. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I had to detox my entire life
Oh,
up until that point, right? So, and I started small because she was like, listen, we don't want to change everything overnight because it's not going to be sustainable. You want to start small so then it just becomes part of your everyday. It's a habit. And then you add on something else, right? That's going to help. And I think for me personally, that was the transformative moment of being able to stay with it.
so leaning in, I think that's one of the things that I love most about you and your messaging and everything I hear. And when I look at your Insta or when you are doing your lives, is that, hey, and what you just said, it's not prime, it's not overnight, it doesn't happen. But if you believe in yourself and your desire to feel better is greater than what you feel this moment, it will happen. But you have to lean
Mm-hmm.
in and you have to maybe start with small dosages, which is a really great. So 3 years you go through
Mm-hmm.
this, and at this point you're just her client. You're not business
Yep.
partners. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And then it wasn't until like, I guess 6 years after we knew each other where Dave and I moved from LA to Michigan, and we were just talking on the phone. We moved like right before COVID hit. And so we were talking on the phone during COVID, and we were like, I feel like we can really help a lot of people figure out if they can take a bio-individual approach to their
Uh-huh.
health and doing what's right just for them, of like giving them power, but also celebrating them and cheering them on, because it can be such a lonely process when
Hmm.
you're just going for it by yourself. That's why I feel like diets are so successful, because there's a community of people like, yeah, I'm doing that
Hmm.
too. Or, there's this camaraderie that happens.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to build a platform and a community that really celebrates you while you're on this journey for yourself to better yourself.
So, I mean, you were her guinea pig, but
Mm-hmm.
the such a success story that you guys
Yeah.
thought, hey, we can duplicate this and really help a lot of people. Now, at that point, though, you had the transformation within yourself. You had changed your diet completely.
Mm-hmm.
You had really eliminated all toxic s- substances, for lack of a better
For
word,
me, yeah.
for you, right?
Yeah.
And then also you got your aren't you like you're like a professional
Yeah. So I
Thank you. I'm like,
fitness instructor. Yeah, no
thank you.
worries.
Hello.
Yeah. So that happened then just 2 years ago. I decided that I was having a lot of trouble after working out. I would like have to take like 2 hour naps, and I came to realize I was over conditioning my body. So also during this process, my older sister became a personal trainer. And so she started training with me twice a
Okay.
week instead of doing these like intense boot camps that I would do like 5 days a week. And so with her and I, with our work together, it also made me realize like this is whole picture. This is
Mm.
not just about nutrition. This is also about the movement. This is about how I can control my mind during situations. Like so then I really like dived into learning more about pain-free management and pain-free movement. And then, which led me to getting my certification in um, as a fitness instructor and then also as a pain-free movement specialist. So
Oh, wow.
I then decided to take it a step further after doing a lot of research of how breath work can be so impactful for the
Mhm.
body and for healing and for boosting your immunity. And so I took everything that I learned and then paired it with the way that functional movement helped my body and created a method of functional movement using mindful breathing techniques during the exercise. And then I pair it with meditation because I'm a firm believer that the mind can help control the way that your body heals.
So true. So, wh- so many things come to mind, but specifically as a woman,
Mm-hmm.
and you were in LA and you were in a different spotlight, let's say, but it doesn't matter. It can be women anywhere. Why do you
Yeah.
feel like this sort of pressure of like, we are going to deny our needs or our health issue or anything just to keep going? I mean, you're an example of that. And we all do it first. We ignore those whispers, that body. What I say
Mm-hmm.
is like, your body always betrays you because whatever you're doing to it, it's going to come out for you and manifest it in your
Yeah.
health, but yeah, we keep going. And I
Yeah.
love that you got through the other side, but for a long time you stayed in it. And why do you think that's that mindset of women to just put on the lipstick and keep going?
I I think there's a few different things. I think that we're well, going back to the way that like I guess society paints this picture of women is to just like keep them down. I also think that it has a lot to do with the medical field gaslighting women when they do
Mm,
have pain, and so they're taught almost to think that this is made up, that it's oh you're a hypochondriac if this is what's happening. It's like no, we as women can be so in tune to our body and being able to feel and actually actively listen to the body. And so when others are denying us our own credibility, I think that
mhm.
it really like messes with the way that we think about how we can transform.
You're so right. I feel like I mean, I don't know that there's a whole movement to do that, but it surely feels that way, doesn't it? That we
Mhm.
get dismissed often. So that's interesting. But now today, first of all, why Detroit, by the way?
So my husband is originally from the Metro Detroit area,
Okay.
and his father and brother at the time just needed some extra love and attention, and so we moved here to kind of provide that.
Okay. How are you doing? Because now, girl, you've been in Montana, you've been LA, and now you're here. I feel like where are we feeling on the Detroit vibe?
Yeah, you know what? It was, like I said, when you're moving right away from like, we also moved at an interesting time when everything
Uh-huh.
was like shutting down. So of course it was like challenging during that time, but I also think it was so transformative because it's where I was given the space and the breath to not like fight so hard for this photography career and like try and, as I was saying before, like outworking all those who
Mm-hmm.
are in that same field and being competitive with that. And it allowed me space and breath to just be like, what is important? Like, what do I want to do? Like, what do I want to leave behind or like leave the world with? Like, if this is helping me, like, why wait? Why am I not
Mhm.
taking steps towards following this route? And, which is also scary at the time when you identify with something for so long, this like label. And that's why I also think that it's interesting for women where we're like, it's you kind of say what you do first instead of who you are. And if we
Yeah.
all just said like, hi, I'm
Yes.
Melissa, like I, and I let my passion is to transform life or like
Yeah.
my alarm. It's so funny, but like I have my alarm set to, and it just says change lives today.
Mm.
And so if we're setting up that rather than like, I'm a photographer, I'm a fitness instructor, I'm a this, I'm a that,
I love
changing the way
that.
we talk about ourselves.
Oh my gosh, that's the takeaway for me today. Thank you for sharing. I absolutely agree with you, and I love the way you said it. So, well, let's talk about what you're doing and
Yeah.
your mission and what's happening with you now, and give us the scoop.
Yeah. So, like I said, the main thing with this method that I am teaching and hoping to introduce to a lot of different people is really to help individuals that overcondition or maybe just need a rest and a reset. Maybe, you know, maybe those tougher workouts are what drive you and are great for your body and fuel your soul, but you just need a day where it's like, okay, I'm going to slow down, tune in, use that breath, be mindful about this movement. Um, and the other side is the goal for me is helping individuals realize that like they can help manage their pain by mindfully moving. So, and taking that holistic approach to your health and as a full picture and doing it for you. So, I think the main thing is staying in your own lane
Uh-huh.
and being able to celebrate others while you're staying in your own lane, which is always difficult because we tend to, be very, we love to compare ourselves to
Mm.
others and
Oh
what they're
my
doing.
gosh, all the time.
But I think one of the biggest reminders is if the same food was in front of you, you were doing the same movement, you were given the same information, you had the same blueprint, and like we would still be all processing every one of those things differently. And also like none of us would have the same results, right? Because
That's true.
we're so individually different.
And I
Um,
love that you do that. So, how specifically do you discover people's blueprint and how through your work? Or
mhm,
is it, or are you really saying, I don't actually have to discover your blueprint? I think if you just start listening to your body and how it
mhm.
responds, is that what we're saying here?
Yeah, it's definitely about learning to be an active listener
Hmm.
for your body, right? So, I provide a method of movement that may feel great to you. And for example, I was given this, opportunity to work with a friend who was continually over conditioning her body. And we started doing some work together of like, hey, like, how do you feel after you're eating this? Or how are you feeling while you sit down to eat this? And then, because sometimes it's not even what you're consuming, it's how you're consuming it. Are you sitting
Mm.
down in a parasympathetic state or is it fight or flight mode? Like, is your body stressed or is it able to process and digest? Well, the same thing is with movement. And so we started working together and had this amazing discovery where she actually hadn't had her period in 3 years. And through our work together of her really focusing on what worked for her, and then
Mhm.
she actually adopted my method of movement and gave up her boot camp classes, she was able to actually get her body back into this like beautiful, healthy space where she, got her period back. And that was something that is obviously transformative because then she can look at the next chapter of what that looks like for children. So,
I love that. Do you now? I got a glimpse of your workout this past weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and I see that. And for you, a lot of it is always reminding your audience or the students, breath, breath,
Mm-hmm.
breathe into it. And I love that because for me, by the way, I don't know my brain. I always have a hard time connecting. When do I breathe in, inhale? When do I exhale? It
Yeah.
takes a minute, right, to learn the flow of it.
Yeah.
But what is it? Do you ever use? Is it just body weight, your system, or do you actually use free weights?
So a lot of what I do currently is body weight. However, I also do strength training and train still with my sister who I do personal training with. So like, and I encourage like, you know, to do multiple things. So if you are doing strength training, that can be like 2 days a week or something. But
Okay.
yeah, right now I do body weight because the biggest thing for me is when I was sick is giving somebody tools that don't cost you anything,
Mm,
right? I don't want someone to feel like, oh, I can't do this workout because I don't have the bands, I don't have the weights, I don't have XYZ, and it's going to
mm.
cost me money. When you're doing multiple hospital visits and trying to get your health in check and that money is flying out the door already, I just want to create something that is accessible to everyone.
I love that you said that because that's, I think, part of the problem. And with a lot of these things, people feel like, oh, what is she selling me now? But
Hmm.
really, you are giving everyone, empowering everyone. Hey, excuses be gone. You've got it
Hmm.
all in you. The power lies in us. And
Hmm.
you're not just saying it, you're like showing us how to do it, which is really very cool. And tell me about how important what should come first, the movement or breath?
Well, I believe in the power of breath only because that's how I start my morning.
Uh-huh.
And I think it also depends on who you are as a person.
Okay.
I tend to be anxious and a little bit of a worrier who loves to write my own stories about the day
Mhm.
before the day happens.
Oh,
So for me, it's a matter of
yes.
waking up and then I do 6 to 8 deep breaths. Then I start to move my body a little bit, stretch and get going. And for me, my like workout doesn't happen until 2 hours after I wake up because that's when my body is ready to actually have full movement. So for me, it always starts with breath. And so when I teach a class, it's a warm up. So you're always doing the breath with that warm up and then going into the exercise. And then we end, like I said, in meditation, really focusing on breath and mindfulness. So,
Always my favorite part of any workout, by the way, is the
mm-hmm.
meditation.
Mine
Uh,
too.
yeah, I love that you're saying that you just anchor yourself every day with breath work. I think that's a really fun thing. And we'll talk about morning routine here soon. But so give me a little glimpse. So I know what you do really well. And then your partner, Mel, is obviously
Mm-hmm.
nutritionist,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So,
So I'm a co-founder and owner of a wellness company called Living Well with Mel and Mel. And Melanie is the nutritionist who helped me transform my life to what it is today. And so she takes a holistic approach into seeing how your personal body takes I guess, reacts to different foods, the way that you're eating, how you're eating. She really takes like a large approach to it rather than just like, here, eat this and eat this, right? It's like, no, let's learn how to read ingredients, ignoring those front labels of sugar free and gluten free and all the frees, right? It's like,
yeah.
well, what's in it? Um, so she really teaches you how to become an expert in the ingredient portion of like what you're eating and then how to eat. So she was actually the first one who introduced me to how breath work could transform my body. And that was through every time I sat down to eat,
Hmm.
she would have me do a breath exercise of like taking like 4 to 8 deep breaths so that I became in a parasympathetic state before I ate. And that helped my digestion. That helped just the way that I processed the food, but it also helped the way that I thought about food because I was able to like actually sit down and my part of my like process was just finding what I was grateful for, right? And
Mm.
just thinking and like thanking the farmers for the meal and like thinking about where it came from, how long somebody took to harvest this meal, or like what that farmer did and how long did they have the cattle on the land and what they were feeding them before you even intake that, right? We're so fast to consume that a lot
Sure.
of times we forget what the process is to go into the food in front of you.
Yeah, I love that, and I will share my story with you in a bit, but I probably can't do too much of that because then I will probably get very depressed and think, oh, those poor migrant workers, they weren't paid enough. And why and how
I know.
and I don't deserve this. I'm not eating this. So that's no,
Mhm.
but I love what you're saying now. But okay, let's get real. Reading nutritional labels, that's no joke. I mean, obviously
It's
I turn
hard.
things around and I can't even pronounce it. So that should be clue number one. If you can't
Correct.
pronounce it, you probably don't want it in your body.
Hmm.
But how do we really realistically do this? And what is your tip for someone who is like, okay, I just need you to lean in? And what's a good tip for this?
Yeah, I mean, one really good tip, I mean, I'm not an expert in nutrition, but I can say
Sure.
what works for me is shopping perimeter at any grocery store, or shopping, which just means shopping that outside, right? You're shopping what's refrigerated, you're shopping what's fresh. You're not shopping in the center aisles where all the
Oh,
preservatives are listed.
that's so easy
Um,
and good.
mhm.
Okay, brilliant. I know
Yeah,
you're
and
like not
then
brilliant, but it works.
no, and then farmers markets is a big one. So knowing and supporting your local farmers, and you just have a closer connection to that food too. You know how it's being, like I said, raised or
Hmm.
grown. Um, and then, like you said, when in doubt, if you're reading ingredients and it does not, you can't pronounce something, just probably not the best thing to grab. And a really simple one is like thinking about ingredients as simple as like if it's peanut butter, technically it should just be peanuts, maybe salt. And so
Hmm.
if there's anything extra, that's, obviously definitely could cause inflammation and pain. So,
What are some of the real high inflammatory foods? I guess in your opinion, what do you
yeah.
think is like in your definitely no list?
Yeah, so mine are I stay away from any oils outside of olive oil, avocado oil, and coconut oil.
Okay.
So, and there's so many different corn oils and cornstarch and all these different
Hmm.
things, right? And so I really
So
focus
no
on
elephant
oils.
ears for you at the fair.
Oh my God. I used to eat those as a kid all the time. They're the best. But I'm like, I also like to think of, oh, Dave and I were just talking about this. Like, you have different phases in life for a reason, right? I had the
Yeah.
indulgent phase and I'm like so happy I had that because
Yeah.
it's like I had those experiences and that was great. And like, okay, but now I um don't have to, right?
Right. Okay. So
But
no certain oils. What else?
yes, I personally am I react highly to inflame right away and get flare-ups through gluten. So I avoid gluten personally. Any sort of sugar, cane sugar
Oh.
specifically, I avoid. Sugar is my number one trigger for migraines, and it also is like immediately my joints are like on fire. So I do coconut sugar. I just adjust, right? And I still live like an 80-20 lifestyle in the sense of like 80% of the time, the way that I live is for my optimal health. And then 20% of that time, if I have a piece of birthday cake or something like
Hmm.
that, usually it's still gluten free, but if I have like some sugar or something, I I know how I can combat it and fight it because it's not part of my everyday. So there's also things where I'm not saying it's an all or nothing solution. I think that that's not sustainable. But
Hmm.
and then alcohol is a real trigger for my body personally as well.
So okay, Yeah, I mean, whew, alcohol, sugar, salt, like all these things. And I've been trying to lean into a healthier lifestyle for years
Mhm.
too. I don't eat poultry or red
Mhm.
meat, and I'm a pescatarian. But I do have a sweet tooth, and I have noticed though lately over the last year or so, it's not really serving me. Like my body, I just
Mhm.
get sluggish, and I say your
Yeah.
body never lies to you. You know exactly what's going on. But I've got
Yeah.
to tell you, acknowledge to you and your partner, Mel and Mel, a few things have changed. I have, since learning about you, getting to know you, following you, a few things that I've already changed in my day to day, by the way,
Mhm.
very slowing down, because I'm one of
Yay.
those people. I'm one of six kids, girl. Food gets in front of me, and I'm like, literally, you may as well put it in a cup because I'm swallowing that because otherwise my
Mhm.
brothers were gonna get to my plate. So we
Yeah.
ate so fast growing up, and
Yeah.
I realized that I'm like, I did not even enjoy that. I just like literally did not even taste anything. So I'm slowing down. I'm
Good.
saying what I'm grateful for before I eat, and I started drinking a glass of water before I do coffee or anything in the morning.
Yes.
So I am
Good.
like really taking all your
Yeah.
little tips. I'm really taking
Oh,
them on. So
good.
yeah, so you talk a lot. Okay, couple things. You mentioned your functional movement. You really
Mhm.
wanted to remove any barriers for women or men. You're not
Yeah.
specifying to women. But what about for food? Because let's be honest, this socioeconomic, it's real, right? It's cheaper to
Yeah.
buy processed food. There's a lot of people, families that can't afford necessarily organic, and
Mhm.
it's not cool because the good food is the expensive stuff, the healthier stuff. So how
Mhm.
can people work around that?
That's a great question. I mean, I do think that that's like a global crisis. It's
Mm-hmm.
definitely bigger than what I have the knowledge to speak with great clarity on. However, I always say that you're going to pay for it one way or another. So the fact that you are consuming certain food, your body and the medical bills and the price you pay later on can have great effects on you. And I also think it's a matter of setting priorities. We all have priorities about our finances. And are we honestly really prioritizing our health and food, or are we prioritizing that trip to Disneyland? And I know that that can, I don't mean that to be triggering in any way for anybody, but it's also just kind of restructuring the way that we think about it. And also, if we start as a society only consuming certain things, that we're part of the problem, right? We're consuming,
Mm.
therefore, they're supplying. So they're not going to supply if the consumption and the food isn't, if the need's not there to create this type of food. So then it starts to level out, starts to even out if we start demanding as a
Mm.
society what we're willing to put in our bodies, what we're willing to not put in our bodies, and that helps drive the market too.
Oh, well, I think that's excellent answer, my friend. Yes, absolutely. So you are an
Yeah.
authority of this. Is sort of saying, I love the way you put it. Like, well, do the math. Do you want to spend a few extra bucks at the grocery store, or do you want to end up in the hospital? And I mean, not to be that extreme, but that's what's happening, right? With
Yeah.
heart disease and just obesity, or just
Mm-hmm.
diabetes. There's so many issues
Yeah.
or things going on. So tell me about, you are a huge advocate. You, Mel and Mel, are huge advocates of morning routines, and you talk a lot
Yes.
about this, and you
Yes.
write about this, and you blog about this. So give me a
Mm-hmm.
glimpse into this.
Yeah. So a morning routine for us is the way that you set up your day is how either that's how productive you're going to be, or that's going to derail your day, right? So, um, and a morning routine should be individualized. Again, this is all we big advocate on bio-individuality and doing what's right for you. And I think a lot of times we read about, like, the morning routine of Jeff Bezos and Oprah and all these things, and we're
Mhm.
like, well, let's apply that because then my life would be like that. again, given the same blueprint, the same things, like every outcome's different. So really figuring out what works for you. So what we like to really preach is, what's your goal in that day? And then kind of like working backwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a morning routine masterclass where we dive in so deep into the benefits and all the science-backed studies on how powerful morning routine can actually transform your, I mean, I'm a big believer because it transformed my life. So I'm going to say life, but it can transform your day, your week, your month. And then for me, it's kind of seasonal now that I live here. I mean, so for me, my morning routine is, because my pain management is my number one thing that I want to make sure that I have under control for my day, and productivity. So that I don't forget anything, and so that I stay ahead of the day instead of a step behind.
Mm-hmm.
I make sure to try and get my morning routine as much as possible. So for me, that is, I do my breath, and the minute my alarm goes off, I hit the snooze, and then I just start doing the breath, whether I'm like walking or whatever, to get to the next room. And I leave my phone in a different room. So I turn it off, and then I start my morning routine without the device. So I do the breath work, and then I do stretches, have a glass of water, I make coffee, and then I ice roller my face while I'm feeding my dogs. And then I usually have coffee over, like journaling, like a brain dump of like everything that's in my head for that day. Or, if my husband's awake, that's when we connect and we have coffee together, and we sit for probably like half an hour to 45 minutes together and just talk about like, what's our day set up. So it can kind of look different depending on when Dave wakes up. But I like to wake up at least 2 hours before I have any responsibility on my calendar that day, because otherwise I tend to always just feel a step behind. And I notice that when I don't do that, I'm constantly feeling like I'm just catching up and I'm rushing, and it's that constant like out of breath feeling, right? Of like,
Yeah.
oh, there's something else and there's something else.
So you start your day pretty early.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I'm the same way. I would rather actually wake up at 6. And by the way, I don't even need an alarm. Like my internal clock is already on, but
Oh,
I
look
would
at
rather,
you.
yeah, I would rather wake up early and just have my time, my morning
Yeah.
routine, because that to me is so precious. And I know if I don't get my meditation in, or my breath work, or my
Mm-hmm.
coffee in whatever order I take it, or my journaling, which is a huge part of my system,
Yeah.
I'm just off for the day. I'm just not aligned for the day, and I feel
Yeah.
it. And then I'm just working on resistance all day. And when
Yep.
you're doing that, I mean, that's just the opposite of flow. And I'd rather be in flow. It's
Yeah.
just life is easier that way.
It's so true. It's so true. I agree.
So, okay, so let me run them down. So you also in your blog, you wrote, name your alarm with a mantra, which I love. Hy-
Mm-hmm.
Hydrate first, move your body, source fresh air, eat nourishing breakfast, release and
Yeah.
acknowledge your thoughts, practice the act of being still. Not in any of this necessarily this order, but these are some
Yep.
of your tips.
Yeah.
Can we talk about eating breakfast now?
Yes.
For women, I know, listen, women are listening here. Eating
Yes.
breakfast, we are all meal skippers.
It's
How do
so
you tell me
true.
the difference here?
I was a huge meal skipper, big time, before my work with Mel. And I would say I probably eat more than my husband now, and I feel more in aligned with my body. And it's been at the same weight for like 6 years now without
Wow.
fluctuating with my work from her. And I will say that I did not believe in eating breakfast, and at the beginning of this, I was very resistant.
Uh-huh.
Because I'm just like a coffee, like, want coffee? I don't want breakfast. And I feel like if you really want to dive into this, she'd be such a good person to have on the podcast, because she
Okay.
can get like really into it scientifically and like give you like all the juicy good stuff. But for me, she taught me that for females specifically, and with our hormones and um, everything, in order to balance our blood sugar, we
Mhm.
need a nutrient dense breakfast because it's providing sustainability for your day, energy, it's
Mhm.
balancing everything in the body, and it's just setting you up for success to make healthier choices throughout your day. So you're less likely to dive into these like hunger, hangry moments of like,
Mhm.
what am I going to have for lunch? Fine, I'll just go through the drive through because I'm so starving and this is what I have available to me. Instead, you're going to be like, oh, well, I think I have this in the fridge and maybe I'll just take some leftovers and then like throw some veggies in the oven and just kind of like do something together or whatever. You know, you just tend to um, go the route of staying on track with your food when you start it off
The right
well.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's a mind shift for me too, because I have been guilty of skipping my breakfast for a long time. So
Hmm.
I'm still working. I'm not there yet, but I'm listening to you and I'm
Hmm.
hearing you, and
Yeah.
I'm leaning into the idea of like,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to just try. It's
So, so
scary.
how I started, because in the beginning with Mel and I's work together, I was like, girl, I'm not a breakfast person. I'm not going to eat breakfast and I'm not going to quit alcohol and I'm not going to do it. Like, I give her like a list of things. She was like, okay, we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
And so she actually started it off with, she was like, in your coffee then to get a healthy fat, to get your brain active and working, you know, like she goes, why don't you, she was like, I just want you to try this of putting a scoop of coconut oil in my coffee. So I started doing that. And so when that started like working and I was like having more energy and
Uh-huh.
the way that she described how everything would start happening, I'm like, okay, that worked. So I'll trust you on this next one.
Uh-huh.
And then when I started adding in breakfast, it was honestly game changer. Like it really did help provide so much energy is where like I mean my fatigue was so intense and
Mm-hmm.
would hit at such crazy hours. And I notice now like if I skip a meal, if I skip breakfast, I'm always having that like intense fatigue crash.
Okay, that's great. I'm writing those tips down, coconut oil, and dang it, I love those oats. We just talk about them. Just eat them. I've been like
Just
eating
eat
them at
the oats,
11. Yeah, just eat the
yeah.
oats. No, I don't, I'm having them for lunch at this point, but I don't care. They're delicious. Okay. So, Mel, as you know, at the Kindling Project, we're all about that little tiny fire inside of us that needs
Hmm.
fuel and fanning. And for you, you found that fire through nutrition and movement and
Yeah.
really starting to care about how you feel. And that moment was your turnaround time. That's when you decided, like, I don't need to be this version of myself. And you just leaned into this new, beautiful life. So, as women who are listening,
Yeah.
give us, and you've started a business and you've had, I mean, since a photographer, I imagine you were an independent contractor, so you've always ran
Yep.
your own business.
Yeah.
So what would you say to, and you've pivoted, which is why I really like your story, is that you started one way and you're still, I imagine, very talented and passionate about photography, but you're leaning into this. What do you tell women who are find themselves in the same situation, who are so comfortable with what they already
Hmm.
know, even though something inside of them is pulling them a different direction?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, and it took me, you know, a couple of years, and even now on my Instagram, I'm like, how do I transition? It's like these like
Mhm.
small things, right? When you've identified as something for so long, it can be really scary to show up in a new way that you're passionate about. But I think that also when you are passionate about something, your light shines so much brighter and people love to follow light, right? Everyone's gonna jump on board. The fact that like, and so the biggest reminder for me and advice is nobody is keeping your score as much as
Mhm.
you are, right? Like I love to use this like golf analogy
Mhm.
where like no one cares what you shoot except for you. Like everyone else is worried about their own score and their own path. So the fact to showing up for yourself, that's that's key of just doing you, staying in your
Mhm.
lane. Like, and again, if you can at any moment, just try to, I think, well, here's one that I think is interesting and maybe this is more of like a tip and advice, but what I had to do was unfollow everyone else that is doing something similar to what you're doing, because you can start to
Oh,
get into this comparison situation where you're like, oh, well, they posted that. Like maybe I should do like a variety or like a thing
uh-huh.
about that. Because what it does is it dims your own perspective and your own voice on something. And this photographer taught me this a long time ago, and I just love that. Like, anytime that you're passionate about something and your message is clear for you and you need to get that across, just zone in on it and try and because the minute you start adding in all of these other individuals who are
Hmm.
doing it, and maybe a slightly different variation or certain things, but you can always do research, but you don't need to have it in your everyday viewpoint, right? Of this coming up constantly, because then that's just keeping us down and dimming our own passion and light towards
Yeah.
actually proceeding with action instead of thought.
Oh, that's really good. That's such good advice. And I mean, I'm in the podcast world along with other things, and it's definitely one where I could easily be like, oh, well, I don't have enough subscribers, or look at so like some
Mm-hmm.
big names out there doing it, incredible job. Obviously, they're
Yeah.
celebrities and so forth. But truthfully, we still feel, Mel and I and Amy feel like, hey, you know what? We have to be proud of the work we do. We know we are passionate
Yeah.
about telling women's stories. And to the point, Mel, where we have also kept our earliest podcasts, even though they were not the greatest, but just to remind us that, we were brave enough to start anyway and
Yeah.
just to go for it. So, but I love what you said, because it's easy to do, isn't it? To
Yeah.
compare or,
And no one's an expert when you start. That's just
yeah.
part of the process, right? So, like, I love that you keep all of the beginnings, and like, I keep early emails of rejections and everything of certain
Yeah.
like jobs, or like, you know, um just different like failures also in life, right? I think failing is
Yes.
so important. I just like, there's nothing better than like a good failure story, because you're like, I did it, I tried, and this is what I learned.
Yeah. And then
um
to see how far you've come. I rarely
yeah.
look backwards, but when I do, it's just to see like, okay, I'm sort of loving this part, this moment. So I'm
Hmm.
good with that. I'm good with my yesterdays
Yeah.
because it led me to
Yes.
today.
It's
Yes.
so
Okay.
true.
So what is for you as a female entrepreneur? What are some of your biggest challenges?
Yeah. So one of my biggest challenges, honestly, and I don't know if you can relate to this, or maybe anyone in the audience, but feeling worthy of success.
Mm.
Um, and I mean that in the way of like, when you're sharing what your goals and your dreams are, and you're seeing this momentum. I've in the past had these situations where I seriously have jumped backwards and been like, I don't know if success is right for me. Like, I see so many people working so hard, and if I take this or I step into it and I own it, are people going to look at me like, what? She has this opportunity, she's doing
Hmm.
that. Like, she doesn't deserve that. I just get this, like, I used to get a loop in my head about it of, and it's taken me a while now to just be like, no, I don't, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm here for the message. I'm here for, impacting other people's lives. And so stepping into being successful is the only way to do that, and to reach other people and to reach more people.
And to that reminder that you have set on your phone every day. So no
Yeah.
matter what trips you up that day, you know what your mission is for the day. And if you can
Hmm.
help one person, just one,
Yeah.
I mean, girl, you're doing things. That's amazing. That is so cool.
Yeah.
And so, what is your favorite? I mean, you're super busy because let's see, let's just run down for everyone all the things that you do.
Yeah.
You are a personal trainer. You
Yeah.
have your business with Mel and Mel,
Yes.
and you're now doing pop ups. And I'm sure
Mhm.
you, and by the way, your wife, mom, sister, you got a lot going on. And photography, are you still do you still play around with that?
Yeah, so I still shoot, and I think it changed a little bit the platform of the advertising for me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind if I grab my? Do you want to ask that again and we can?
Yeah, no, fine. You're fine. So generally speaking, give me some productivity hacks that you have.
Um, Productivity hacks. I mean, the big one for me is morning routine.
Hmm.
The next is my night routine is just as important as my morning routine. Um, and like I write everything down. Like I have to have a visualization of everything that I'm doing, everything that I have on my plate. So, um, I have this big whiteboard and I have each company kind of drawn out and mapped out. And then underneath it, it has like, it's like a family tree of like,
Uh-huh.
here's the goals, here's the next thing. And then it's like multiple actions. So, because how I start everything is it's with great purpose. So I always have this like end goal in mind. And then what I do is take that end goal and then I spider out different legs of, okay, what do I need to do in order to get there? And then I spider it out even more of
Hmm.
what are these action steps? And to the point of like it gets so low that it's a matter of like just write an email and send one email today. And then the next step and so that everything is going to be leading back. So I kind of always take the end goal and then work my way
Yeah, I
kind of
love that. I do that
down and
too.
then back.
Think, everything is with the end in mind. What is it? Even
Yeah.
like this podcast, what is it that I want? What's the message that I want the audience to hear? That I want them to move, that I want them to be inspired by Mel to move and nourish and feel
Mhm.
better about themselves. So yeah, I think that's really, really a solid advice. So here's my thing for you. Why don't you
Mhm.
challenge our audience
Mhm.
with one thing they can do today to lean into? Let's focus on movement because that's your
Yeah.
true area of
Yes.
expertise.
Yeah, so I challenge you to move your body in a way today that leaves you smiling. So doing something that fuels you and makes you happy is what's going to be sustainable. So
Mm.
whether that's walking your dogs and really taking the moment of like being in the present moment of that walk, or it's going to rock climbing gym, or it's going to a trampoline park with your kids. Like I don't know, whatever that is, it's some sort of movement that like fuels you and makes you happy. Um, or the challenge of parking the furthest spot away at the grocery store and walking in.
Mm.
Just getting that body fueled, right? It's it's so amazing and so powerful about how our body not only can, yes, help physically, with physique and whatever else. And I think that like our society is really focused on that.
Hmm.
But the real transformative messaging for me with movement is what it can do for your mind and provide longevity for your life and healing from the inside, creating that moment of this healing internally so that that can spark joy for longevity rather than this exterior physique of in the now, in the moment, short-term thinking. So, and not that those are bad goals at all. It's
Hmm.
just a different approach to moving. And so I just encourage you to move that's fueled for you, that sparks some sort of joy.
Yeah, I like that with a smile. Whatever makes you smile, that it makes a difference. So, what about tell everyone how they can work with you and where they can find you?
Okay. So I am online at movingwellwithmel.com. That is where you'll find all of my movement practices. Pop-up events will also be listed there. And then I teach at a local studio in Grosse Pointe called the Corner Studio. So I teach there on Mondays and Fridays. So you can come to a class and join me live if you would like.
Fun.
And then Mel and I's work is on livingwellwithmelandmel.com. We provide, if you want to sign up for our newsletter, we provide amazing newsletters full of like tips and different things on what you can do to better your health and taking that individual approach to do so. And then on social media, I am at Melissa Coulier on Instagram and on Facebook. And yeah.
Okay. Well, I will definitely include all these in the show notes for everyone.
Great.
And so we'll definitely lead everyone back to you. So Mel, looking back at that, go back to that young girl in Montana, pre-marriage, pre-being tripped up in that restaurant. What would you say to her knowing what you know now?
Oh my gosh.
Uh,
God, that's a great question. Um, like don't take it so personally. As far as failures, learn from your failures, collect your wins, and do you.
That's awesome. Collect your wins. I like that. And we have so many, right, that we often
Yeah.
dismiss. So that's great. Okay. And then final question is we always wrap up the show with a shout out to someone in your life or something that happened this week that you just want to celebrate or recognize or acknowledge. Go ahead. Go for it.
Okay. I'm shouting you out. Thank you, Mick, for not only like attending the event, but like wanting to, thinking that my story is important enough to share with your platform and your community. And I just am so grateful for meeting you and having that universe align us in the way that it did. So, yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. The feeling is mutual and I acknowledge you for sure. And you might be that person that gets me to eat breakfast, by the way. So I'm afraid that if I
God.
interview your partner, Mel, I will be eating like 3 square meals a day, which is really scary, really scary concept.
Totally.
Yeah. But I want to chat out this week to my sisters. It seems like they are on loop a lot, but sometimes life just isn't as you planned. And I think I've made a mention this to you with my kids sometimes. It's like, yeah, fuck yeah, those are my kids because you get so excited.
Yeah.
And some weeks are like, fuck, those are my kids. Yes, I've got to claim them. They're mine. This week, I felt like it was one of those like, I've got to claim them. They're mine. But I wouldn't be able to go through life and these ups and downs without my amazing sisters and friends and new friends who say, you know what, we gotcha. We're here for you. So I love the power of sisterhood. And that's what we're trying to do here at the Kindling Project.
I do too.
It's just cultivating sisterhood. So thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate you so much. And remember, fire starters, it only takes one spark to ignite the fire within. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.